Look, I don't have a prepared statement, so just fire away, ask questions, whatever you need. I will say this, though, we haven't gone through our evaluations. That process is going to take place next week, so it's one of the reasons why typically I wait till the Senior Bowl to do this little conference, but Doug convinced me to do it this week, so you can thank Doug.
So Mickey, you've been at this a long time. Every year there are challenges. But
Yeah.
when you look at this year, how far over the cap you are.
Yeah.
Worst record since 2005. No number one. I mean, the collection of challenges. How do you describe that?
Yeah. Look, all those things are true, but yet it's a little misleading, I think, to say, for example, we don't have a number one. Well, we traded that. We got two number ones this year, so I'm really happy with those two guys. Not happy that Trevor was injured and that slowed his progress, but I think we're really excited about Trevor and Chris as being part of our team. So the cap is a challenge. Look, it's going to be a challenge. It's a bit of a it's always been a challenge for us. For the last 5 or 6 years, when you have a good team, that's what happens. But I think the COVID year obviously created a little bit more of a challenge for us than we expected, and we'll deal with it. So that there's nothing there that. Well, it's always concerning, so I don't want to say it's not concerning, and yet, we've. I think we do a good job of handling that.
When you say your evaluations, is that players, staff, everything that you're doing?
Yeah, it's primarily the player evaluations we'll go through, and then we'll talk about staffing and all that in the coming weeks. I like to have a little bit of time go by after the season's over, so you take some of the emotion out of it. So this week's kind of a down week.
Staff-wise, is there anyone definitely going to be back, or is anything up in the air?
Yeah, no, we haven't. We haven't even really discussed it, to be honest with you.
Do you expect a significant rise in the cap this year with the new TV contracts, or would that be next?
I hope so. I don't know the answer to that. Because some of that rise gets mitigated by what happened with the COVID year and some of the smoothing out that the league's doing, but we haven't got a number yet from the league. So
I guess everyone talked about it being this year, but it just seems a little more vague. I
Yeah.
don't know why. Maybe because they just did the TV contracts.
Yeah, it's vague for us right now. So yeah, I don't have answers for that. That's above my pay grade at this point, I guess.
Mickey, from the team's standpoint, what did you all want to accomplish with the Michael Thomas renegotiation?
Yeah, I think we just wanted some flexibility for both of us to, see where we're at going forward and give us a little time to, work on that. Look, the main thing here with Mike is for him to get healthy and get back being the player that he's been for us in the past. And, look, I was really excited about him at the beginning of our season, and unfortunately he had the toe injury and that had to get taken care of. But it's not anything that he can't come back from.
Mickey, just to clarify, since you said staff decisions won't start till next week, Dennis Allen's definitely staying as the head coach of
Yeah,
the team.
yes.
And what is your evaluation of the job he did?
Yeah, again, we're gonna, discuss that next week, and I don't think it's fair for me to discuss that with you before I've discussed it with him.
Has anyone asked about any of your personnel executives for other GM jobs?
Not yet.
Mickey, can you go a little bit more into the Michael Thomas contract? Was that something his camp approached you guys with, or?
Yeah, I don't think, I want to discuss, the process or anything like that. It's just something that we mutually agreed to do, and it really buys us some time to figure out where we're going to settle on, on all that. It's part of cap management, really.
Does not yet mean you're under the impression that people will ask, or does it just mean not? Does it just mean?
I said not yet because no one's asked, and I didn't want to say that they're not going to or that they are going to. I don't, that's out of my control.
When teams request to talk to Sean, do you guys discuss parameters of compensation? Is there a general understanding of, okay, if this group scored
this is gonna be kind of mark, or?
To some degree, yeah, to some degree.
So if a team is interviewing him, they've already agreed that they will meet?
No, we haven't settled on exactly what the compensation is going to be yet, but they're well aware that there's going to be compensation.
They're aware of what you would want, it's sort of like, they know going in that if we choose to hire him, it will be in this range or something like that?
Yeah, I'd say that's fair.
And have,
Look, the reason I'm being a little bit coy about this is that it's going to be different for every team because they have different picks and they have different things available to them, and so
but
it's not firm with.
hard and fast rule, I guess, it's what you feel comfortable with.
Yeah,
They have to get your permission, that is the only rule.
you have to get our permission to have a discussion with him, and then they have to have we have to have the compensation settled before they can actually make an offer or hiring.
And there are reports that Arizona, Houston, and Denver have received permission to interview him, is that correct?
Yes,
Have any other teams received permission to interview?
not yet. No,
Have you declined permission to any team?
not yet. No.
Okay.
Have the interviews with, I know Denver's next week, is Arizona or Houston been set yet?
I don't know that. I don't know. Once it gets beyond the permission, that's out of my need to know or right to know.
Can you give us your impression on the whole, the prospect of Sean re-entering the league, and whether it's this year or next year, and, you know, the extent to which you just feel like whatever he does is fine, or the extent to which you acknowledge the value that he still has to the team?
Yeah. It's complicated, because look, I have such, great respect for him. He's a close friend of mine. He's a great coach. All those things. I want the best for him. I do. We do collectively as an organization. I mean, he gave everything that he could possibly give to the New Orleans Saints and took us to heights that, the organization, the team never achieved before. So I absolutely want the best for him. But I also recognize that he's a valuable asset. His contract is a valuable asset to our club, and it's our duty to maximize that. Look, I think between the quarterback of a team and the head coach, no one else impacts winning more than those two guys in any building. And so I know what he brings to the table, and I know that's really valuable, and it's our obligation to maximize that value. If he chooses to coach again within that time frame where we have those rights.
Can you explain this to me? So he had 2 years left on his deal this year, or he had, I guess, 3 years this year and 2 more. But why wouldn't that contract, like with a player, that would sort of
Yeah.
toll, like, if he waits out the window, you don't have rights to him anymore once those 2 years are up?
Yeah, I don't know what the exact rules are relative to that, so I'm not really concerned about it. Mike, I haven't done a lot of nosing around about that.
Right. But I mean, is it that there is sort of a limit to when
Yeah.
you would get compensation for him, and that's when the original contract was?
That's what I understand currently, yes.
But as of now, you're not paying him anything, he's not working at all, right?
Right.
So.
It's probably
It was weird that they treated it as he couldn't interview for a job, as if he was under, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, those are all, questions for the league office, not for me, so.
Vicky, as you head into the offseason, how do you feel about the team's current quarterback situation?
Yeah, again, that gets back to, our evaluation of the roster. We haven't done that yet. We're going to do that in the coming weeks, and then I'll be able to give you a little more definitive answers. But obviously, we're disappointed in the end result. 7-10 wasn't what our expectations were coming into the season, and we didn't make the playoffs, so obviously we're not happy about that. And yet, I also thought that, man, there's a lot of really positive things that happened during the course of the season that give me optimism going forward.
The stuff you guys did with Davenport and Anivada's deals, pushing those
Yeah.
that void date back, is that just to buy a little more time?
Yeah, it's just flexibility, cap management and flexibility, yes.
Is Adorso, I'm assuming that means doors opening if there is, you know, a deal that can be reached for.
Yeah.
either of us.
Absolutely.
Even though you haven't done the evaluation yet, when you sat there at the start of training camp, you were a lot more optimistic, as everyone was.
Yeah.
Just at this point, without doing the evaluation, what superficially, what are some of the factors that led to not having the success that you expected?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's some obvious things that, you know, we had a number of injuries that you're expecting to have some injuries, but I think the volume that we had and the magnitude of, or the quality of the player that you know, we lost a lot of starting players to injury during the course of the season. That it's hard when you are, you get a new head coach, you know, the quarterback is different, play caller's different, all those things that happen, you know, that normally you have this continuity, and all of a sudden you can't establish any continuity because of the injuries. You know, the guys in and out of the lineup. And at the same time, there's a lot of young guys that stepped forward and got, you know, valuable experience and had an opportunity to develop. So there's some positives that come out of that as well. But there's so many variables that happen to, you know, change a season from being maybe 11 and 6 to, you know, 7 and 10.
Mickey, after 2 years, no playoffs, do you have to kind of reassess the roster building in the offseason and how aggressive you are in certain things and all that stuff?
I don't know that changes, you know, our attitude about it, or it certainly doesn't change the process that we go through. I think, look, we have to take a hard look at our roster, be honest with ourselves, and be honest about what we can do, and you know, go forward with that, and we will. I think we do a good job of doing that on a year-to-year basis, and yeah, we'll do the same thing.
One of the, like, big debates in the fan base kind of is like, blow it up, start over, give it to everybody, versus like, you know, just keep going and trying to be better. Is there ever a time when it makes sense to get rid of like everybody and start over, or?
I don't know, maybe.
Not, I mean, like, not specifically.
I don't think we're there by any stretch of the imagination. We have a really good defense with a lot of young core players on defense. We have you know, we have some really good offensive players, and yeah, we got holes. We do, but I don't think we're anywhere close to that in my mind.
It just seems like teams that do that have a hard time ever coming back, but some teams just stay.
Yeah, I think that's an easy thing to say, but I mean, you accumulate talent over a number of years. It's not like, look, I wish every year we had a draft like 2017 where, you know, you're getting 5 or 6, you know, really, really good starting players, but that's more unusual. So I'm not sure I'm answering your question, but now's not the time for us to, we don't have any plans on blowing things up.
2006 you did it, right? So
Yeah.
you've done it before. But
I wouldn't say that we blew things. Well, yeah, you're right. That was a complete change due to a lot of different circumstances. You're right. Yeah.
But,
Yes, we did do that before.
in terms of a multi-year perspective, like you're talking about acquiring talent, as far as confirming that Dennis Allen is back, how does your, even though there's only 1 year as head coach, how does your long-term perspective on him influence your decision to stay the course right now? Or
Yeah. Well, look, I think one of the things that we've had going for us for the past 15 years, whatever it's been, is stability. I think that's a commodity that's hard to come by in the NFL. And so, look, I'm looking for stability, and that starts with, obviously it starts with ownership and GM and head coach and having a core group of players that you nurture and develop. And so that's the attitude that we have, and that's the process, and that's the things that we believe in. So I'm expecting to continue that.
And Nick, you said in one of your previous answers that this team does have some holes. What are
Yeah.
some that you could-
Yeah, well, I think I don't want to do that right now. I want to go through this process that we have in the next couple of weeks, because, you know, it's not just my opinion, it's the opinion of our coaching staff and our personnel department, all of our football operations, and I have opinions about that right now, but until we have a consensus, I'd rather not get into it.
You guys went into the season expecting James Winston to be your starting quarterback, and obviously it didn't play out that way. Has his camp asked for a trade, or do you expect that could
Yeah.
happen depending on?
Yeah, again, no,
Not to get
they haven't asked for a trade or anything like that, so that hasn't happened. As far as the rest of it, again, that's just part of, we're gonna go through this evaluation process, and then we'll, we'll develop an off-season plan, we'll communicate to our players, and we'll go from there.
Mickey, one thing that stands out about trading this year's first and drafting the two players you did last year is that 2 years without the possibility of drafting a quarterback in round one with those picks unless you acquire more. What is it about the team's makeup, the quarterback landscape that made you not feel like you needed to sort of stockpile first round picks to take shots at quarterback?
That's a question. I don't have an answer for it right now. I'd have to think about that for a bit, but, I think generally speaking, you're gonna have to be in the top 5 to get somebody that you feel really good about as a quarterback, right? Generally speaking. And, we weren't in that position a year ago, and I certainly didn't expect us to be in that position this year, and again, I liked what we did. I liked the players that we ended up with in this last draft, so today I wouldn't change that. We'll see going forward.
When you guys made that trade last year, was it with the idea that maybe, you get a first round pick for Peyton in a year, or was it the circumstances of what you just said,
Yeah.
and liking those two players?
No, listen, I've never counted on getting anything for Sean because, listen, he might decide to do the media deal for 5 years. Who knows? So that's not something that I know I have a history of spending cap going forward, but we weren't spending draft capital going forward by anticipating that what we might get if he decides to coach again.
Can you clarify if y'all have a number 6 for the Bradley Roby trade? I've seen some confusion as to how that played out.
I don't know as I sit right here because it's really close. And look, we basically excused the staff after the last game, so I don't know where that ended up. To be honest with you, as I sit right here, I'll find out next week.
You mentioned accumulating talent earlier, and one of the ways that this franchise has done it remarkably well is through the undrafted free agent.
Yeah.
market, to the point where Juwan Johnson said the other day, I don't know what they're doing, but it's working.
Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit to the impact of y'all's focus on that pool?
Yeah, look, I think that's a credit to our area scouts, our college scouting staff, our coaches. It's a collaborative effort. First, our guys identify players that have a particular quality. Usually it's 1 or 2 qualities that we really value. Bringing them into the building, and then our coaches developing those players. And we've had good success over the years. It's been an area of pride by our college scouting staff and Jeff and all his group. And, our coaches have bought into that over time about, developing someone that no one else expects, that guy to have success. And look, we're really proud of Jawan and Rashid, and we've had guys over the Shai Tuttle. We've had guys over the years that we've had a lot of success with that, and we're proud of it. And so we emphasize it, when we're going through the process. We talk a lot about those guys that are on the backboard that aren't going to be drafted. Jeff, in particular, does a great job of making sure that we have, targets on particular players that we don't think will be drafted.
You mentioned the qualities, like identifying the qualities. Do you happen
Yeah.
to remember, or are you willing to share the qualities?
Yeah, I think, first of all, speed. That's hard to coach, speed. So speed, he's coachable, smart, productive, tough, all these things. He came in with an injury, and so it took us a while before, we were able to see what he had. But yeah, and look, each position's a little different in terms of the qualities that we're looking for and value. But I think the makeup of the player is really important, particularly with these undrafted free agents.
And as you go forward, into the kind of scouting portion of this offseason, without a first-round pick, how does that affect the pool of players you might target to take a closer look at when
Yeah.
you don't know maybe there was a first-round pick that you might end up with? And how do you avoid wasting time on players that you might not have a chance at?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, first of all, we're not going to change who and how we evaluate them. We're going to evaluate them all because, look, these guys might be free agents, 4 years from now that we're interested in. There might be a trade opportunity for us to move in the draft. So we have to evaluate them all like we would. I think the only change might come when we start sending our coaches out and or we have the 30 visits that we're allowed to bring in the building. That might change a little bit in terms of, hey, we're not going to bring somebody in here that we have no chance to draft because, they're going to be a top, 5 or 6 pick or whatever, and, we've got no chance to move to that direction. So that'd be the only area that I would say might get adjusted.
If Sean were to get traded somewhere, would you guys have like a discussion beforehand about like your staff and protecting people and not going with them? Is that something that would be like negotiated with them?
Well, our guys are under contract, so the only guys that could actually move without our permission are guys that are being promoted into, coordinator positions. So it's not really a real need. I'm sure if there was somebody that he really wanted that was a lateral move, he'd call and ask, and we'd probably say no.
Does the co-coordinator tag on the defensive side impact that at all? Is that seen as a lateral move, or is going to a sole?
Yeah, I think that is I think those guys would have the right to move to a coordinator position if it's a play caller position. Yes.
Did you ever hear back on the appeals for the big injury fines?
Not yet, but we haven't had the club hasn't had their appeal yet. It's going to happen next week.
So you guys are allowed to appeal as an organization as well.
Yeah, we're allowed to appeal, and Cam had his hearing. I don't think he's heard back from him.
And someone has said that it's possible y'all wouldn't be able to appeal at all, which seems
No,
crazy.
no. There's an appeal. He was injured,
One or two more?
or no more.
It's kind of related to the previous question. I'm trying to find the right way to ask it, but y'all done a lot of like the void years and spending future cap money.
Yeah.
Like, do you envision any of that aspect of things slowing down when you try to get the?
Yeah, it has to. It has to because look, we've got to catch up. We've got to manage this back to the middle. That's been our plan all along, and obviously, the COVID year and the reduced cap and reduced, league-wide revenues and the smoothing out of all that is impacted that. So, but yes, we have to make up for some of that.
You do have some of that, like that money and stuff coming off the books with like, I think Drew and Ron come off the books.
Yeah,
So like, you're starting to kind of come back a little bit?
Yeah. that's how it happens.
You had mentioned the 2 years of injuries. How concerning is that? Do you anticipate looking into maybe changing things up medically?
Well, look, I haven't gone through, we haven't really
Right.
drilled down, but my initial look at that is our soft tissue injuries are way down from a year ago. So that's encouraging. But we had some injuries. We had a bunch of rib injuries this year, for example, that that doesn't happen with this frequency. We've had some foot injuries that more frequent than we've had in the past. So yeah, we have to look at and say, hey, is there anything in common? Is there anything about these injuries that are common that we can prevent? On the other hand, we've had fewer knee injuries than so it's all subject to review, which is part of the off-season evaluation. I don't know that it's a lot different, you know. That's a player, you know, appealing his discipline versus the club appealing their discipline for that.
It's heard by the same people.
I don't know that, I assume. But it's, you know, the player's represented by the union and his council and we have ours.
Again,
I think it's the same, pretty much the same arguments, though.
haven't done your full player evaluation, but what was your feeling about Jameis Winston and, you know, you guys got a small sample size and then he never got
Yeah.
back on the field. I mean, do you think it was about Andy's play? Do you think that was about having him?
Yeah, look, I don't want to get into that with specific players until after we, you know, have the group meet and talk about it, as opposed to me just giving my personal opinion. Okay, thank you, guys.
Appreciate it.
We can still visit the Senior Bowl.